Awesome. So we are live. Hi, Narrative Muse team, Nigel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for dialing into this live, coming direct to you through LinkedIn and Facebook. For those of you that are new to this, we're going to be online for around 30 minutes, diving into the world of Narrative Muse, their current equity crowdfunding campaign. And I have a bunch of questions that I've pre-written for Nigel, and we've actually just run through all of them. But we would love your questions too. So pop them in the comments and we'll try to answer them at the end or even while we're going. And also feel free to heart this, thumbs up it, or whatever it is that you can do wherever you are right now. We'd love the feedback as we're going.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, it's nice to know people are there, right?
Exactly.
But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Anna, the co-founder of PledgeMe. PledgeMe has been around for about 10 years, and we help people fund the things they care about in a more inclusive way than you might expect from a bank or a VC fund. But enough about us. Let's hear about our fabulous guest, Nigel, the co-CEO of Narrative Muse. Nigel, can
Hello.
you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Nigel Lopez-McBean. I'm co-CEO at Narrative Muse. We have two CEOs, Narrative Muse, Bo Johnson being the other one. It's a setup I think is probably a little bit ahead of its time. It's quite cool. That whole shared responsibility thing is really helpful when you're involved in the world that we are, of representation, equity, and all of that kind of good stuff. So it kind of fits our worldview. My role is focused on growth, comms, and sort of overall strategy.
I love it. And what does that mean? Like, what does Narrative Muse do, and how do you support that growth?
So we do two things. The first being we offer tailored content recommendations that match user preferences with books, movies, and TV shows that are aligned to a person's identity, interests, and values. So we do this by building technology that prevents content echo chambers by recommending said content, those books, movies, and TV, based on users' preferences rather than what they may have watched or read in the past. So what we've discovered is that when you detach the idea of content recommendation from previous consumption, you end up with a sort of purer and more nuanced view of taste and demand, which is especially helpful when trying to understand underserved content audiences. So far, we have collected over 1 million user reactions to books, books, movies, and TV shows, with engagement that's consistently growing really well. And what this does, which leads to the second part of what we do, it allows us to collect really valuable and difficult to obtain insights and data that we can provide and work with the broader publishing and screen industries to help both inform and advocate for what those diverse and underserved audiences want to read or watch. So that's kind of the point of all of this. The point of everything that we do is based around impact. So affecting change in the way that people evaluate stories and decide which stories get made, and try and ensure greater representation in for all.
And the million-dollar question is, how do you make money from this? Like, what's the revenue model underpinning Narrative Muse?
So there's four elements to that. The first being content analysis, so insights on individual pieces of content, so movies, books, TV, and we can provide insight on those for creative development and marketing purposes. The second being advertising, so the opportunity to do hyper-targeted content advertising on our recommendation platform. The third being market analysis, software as a service, so subscription service for self-serve insights to help content producers and market researchers understand trends. And the final one would be we're going to get to delivery of a really high value add membership service for recommendation platform users.
And it's not just trends from the past, hey? It's the trends that you see coming in the future because you know what these underserved audiences really want, even if they've never had it before. Is that right?
Absolutely. So it's essentially a view of the future, which is what our technology provides. So it's based on forward-facing insights. So as I say, it's not based on what you may have read or watched before in the past. It's based on you, who you are, your preferences, your preference set, and then we deliver you insights based on you and your interests and your identity, which gives us a much purer a more nuanced view of what you're interested in.
And we're seeing this more and more, right? Where content is coming out that's actually serving audiences that have been left out for a while. And it's
Mm.
just hitting the spot, right? Like we're seeing that time and again. And so it's awesome to hear what you're doing could make more of that, right? That's the goal, is to keep on delivering there. So how
Yeah.
did it start? What was the sort of founding moment?
So it was originally started by two women, Bro, who's the co-CEO, and her partner, Teresa. Bro's a film editor, Teresa's a screenwriter, which is super important to the whole story. It originally started as a website for book and movie reviews by and about women and gender diverse people. It became apparent to all very quickly that to be truly impactful, the better approach would be to try and deliver tailored recommendations matched to users' taste and identity. The main issue was that's a difficult thing to do because it requires a very different forward approach to data built bespoke around personal preferences. So to partly explain that, most recommendation approaches are collaborative based. The trouble with those large data sets is that they tend to exacerbate pre-existing disparities. And the difference here is that we have a bottom-up approach, which means that the individuals and the users can genuinely express their kind of tastes and sort of true wants.
I love it. And how did you get started in this? What was the moment where you were like, yes, this is a company that I want to be a part of?
I'd spent a long part of my, because I'm a content creator. I'm a producer by trade, but I've spent a lot of time working in various elements of the creative industries, always working around data. So I have a really good understanding of the different use cases for that data and how it fits into creative decision making. And when I met Bro and we spoke at length about the whole industry and just finding out more about this technology, became clear to me that this is a really powerful idea that, if executed in the right way, has the potential to really change the way people think about creating stories and gaining that understanding about audiences, because it's very, very difficult to sell ideas or get people motivated about ideas that are new or might be for new audiences if you fundamentally can't really prove the demand. Intuition isn't quite enough. So the idea is to kind of mix the intuition with some really robust data about actual user demand and what people want to read and watch, regardless of whether those stories actually exist or not, which I think is super important.
Awesome. Hey, for anyone that's watching, I see a few of you coming in and coming out. Do feel free to ask questions. Just make sure you pop them either under the post on LinkedIn or Facebook for PledgeMe, and let us know what your questions are just in the comments. So, Nigel, can you tell us a little bit about your current equity crowdfunding campaign? What are you raising money for?
So the best way to explain it is growth. The funds raised will help to expand the capability of our platform to keep up with user demand. We're in a really fortunate position in that we've discovered that whilst we're very proudly at a New Zealand business, we've discovered that there are people all over the world that are very interested in receiving not just our content recommendations, but the adjacent insights. So we want to kind of improve the capability of our platform, also want to kind of drive the sales of the audience insights, which is really important, and also expand our technology into AI-driven content data. We simply have to be using and understanding that technology to allow us to scale in the way we want. Also, we want to invest in marketing and communications with the goal of amplifying our visibility so that more users can find us. And because we have ambitions to scale quickly, we have to make sure that we're scaling in the right way. So an element of this is to invest in the financial, legal, regulatory, and technical architecture, which will allow us to do things in the right way.
And you're already growing, right? You've already got 55,000 users all around the globe using your platform. And the technology that you've built so far has been built by people that are really, really experienced in this space. Can you tell us a little bit more about the technology and who's building it?
Yeah. So our lead data science is Courtney Schaefer. She's fantastic. And she has been instrumental in bringing this all together. So I'll go back slightly to go forward one step. So as mentioned before, the most content recommendation approaches are collaborative based. So those large data sets do exacerbate pre-existing disparities, which means from a content perspective, a lot of content, a lot of stories, and a lot of voices are left in the shadows because they aren't seen by the overarching crowd as being popular. So in this situation, we found that information is incredibly powerful. So our algorithm requires a lot of bespoke information about those stories, which we can't really get from any other databases. So we were forced into a position where we had to simply build our own. And it is incredibly comprehensive because we believe that this forward-facing and active data is both a really valuable and possibly slightly misunderstood insights opportunity within the media and entertainment industry. So what we do is we find extensive data about every book, movie, and TV show that we put on the platform. This information might include information about the characters' identities, who they are, where they live, topics within the content, how those particular stories might make somebody feel, and whether there's anything within the stories that people might want to avoid. So that in itself is a lot of work, which is also why we need to begin to bring AI closer into the mix to allow us to automate some of those processes, to allow us to scale the number of titles in our database.
Awesome. And so what is the global opportunity for your company? Where are the opportunities for this?
So demand for in audience insights across media, entertainment, marketing, and consumer research is it's a growth industry. It's currently somewhere in the region of a $4 billion industry that's predicted to double by 2029. And there is a particular interest in insights built around diverse and underserved audiences. That's partly driven by the fact that we're in sort of new social climates, and we're seeing change in social attitudes, which requires a different level of understanding to be able to find gaps in the market and also opportunities. And those opportunities might not necessarily be new opportunities. They're opportunities that we've identified as being underserved. So it's really an opportunity to really get a sense of what people want and why they want it. Also, the insights come with an array of use cases. So everything from content decision-making, idea generation, to advertising, to detailed research into understanding diverse communities' needs and preferences. And this is all super valuable and increasingly critical information across lots of industries.
I love it. Just want to let you know, since we've been talking, a person is pledged. So I'm taking that as it came from this conversation. So thank you if you're watching this right now and you just pledged.
Thank you.
Hey, Nigel, with that sort of global opportunity, there was a really interesting example use case in your IM around the BBC, and just specifically the BBC and how much money they were putting towards this sort of research. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
It's a really good and interesting example of the importance of this sort of data. So I think it was last year, the BBC went out and basically said that we need to understand diverse and underserved audiences at a much higher level. And they've committed a percentage of their £2 billion content budget. I think it's 2 or 3% they've committed to understanding these audiences, what they want, what they like, what they don't, which is also a really good indicator of how difficult and how fiendishly difficult it is to get this sort of insight. When you have an organization, and I used to work for them, as esteemed and connected as the BBC, saying that they need help with this, I think it's really powerful.
Awesome. And so talking a little bit more about your current campaign, why did you decide to equity crowdfund?
We've seen other people do it successfully is one. We ran into you guys, which was a second, which was really cool. And then I think the main thing was it just kind of felt right. And there's just a lot about it that speaks to the way in which we run as a company. We're kind of quite excited to have the opportunity to invite the community to kind of help us on this journey to try and create a more inclusive and equitable media landscape, which we now know categorically that a lot of people want. And then also the idea of being co-owned by the community is also a quite cool way for groups and identities and people that don't often get the opportunity to participate in early stage ownership of companies that kind of advocate for them, particularly in the representation and equity space. And because of that, we had this thought that there's something about the breadth of expertise that we could potentially bring together via a really sort of clever mix of angel investment, VC, and that all-important audience input. And I think that is kind of quite exciting and also quite unique for a company of our sort. So that's, as I say, it just kind of felt right in lots of ways.
In some ways, it's almost like a modern day cooperative, right? The people that are using it own it, and that sort of keeps it on track.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, what's the minimum investment if people are thinking about investing?
So we've tried to keep things as inclusive as possible. So minimum investment is $50, but also $50 is one thing, but there are other sorts of minimum investment. We love the idea that someone would share this campaign. That's a form of investment, or tell somebody about the campaign, or use the platform. All of that. These are all things that are investment of sorts. So whether you pledge, whether you talk about us, whether you share, it's all really gratefully received.
Awesome. And you are getting support. You've had almost 50 people pledge 65% of your goal. So
Yeah,
you're over $228,000 now, I think.
really incredible. Yeah, it's
Awesome.
really motivating. And we're using it as real motivation and a real kind of flag to understand how many people back this mission. I think it's very cool.
Awesome. And so one of the questions we get a lot from people is how do they actually invest? So I might quickly answer that question
Yeah,
and just say that so when you go to the platform, you will need to sign up as a user and then sign up as an investor. So signing up as an investor is you providing some identity information, address information, and confirming sort of your status if you're a resident in New Zealand or somewhere else. And this is important because we are regulated under a few different New Zealand laws that mean we have to comply with different things, including verifying who you are. So once that investor information comes in and you've registered, you can put in your pledge amount, calculate how many shares that will get you, and then complete your pledge. But if you have any questions when you're doing that, you are more than welcome to email PledgeMe. So email us on contact@pledgeme.co.nz. And we also have paper pledging packs. If people decide they don't want to go through the whole process of signing up online, there's another way of doing it as
mm,
well. So just let us know if you need any help, and we can definitely support you. So just want to remind people, if you do have any questions, pop them in the comments, and we will make sure to respond to them as we go. We've got a few more questions our end, and then we will wrap up around 8:30, if not a little bit earlier.
mhm.
Nigel, what do investors get if they invest?
The main one is, as we build insights product, investors will receive access to those insights at either vastly reduced cost or, in some cases, free. And as we scale this information, we know that offering is going to become more and more useful in ways we're only just beginning to discover. Ultimately, the aim of all of this is to ensure that our investors become our biggest advocates. So a big piece of making that happen is getting people to understand what these insights are, share these insights, and try and find use case for them.
Awesome. And so if they invest, they become owners in the company, they get shares, they are part of your company, but also there might be other things in the future that they receive. So what are your tips for anyone who's sort of an up and coming entrepreneur, especially working in this diversity, equity, and inclusion space?
It's a really good question. I would probably say be prepared to explain a lot and explain yourself a lot. I think the big biggest learning is really never assume what is 100% real to you has ever been possibly ever considered by someone you might be speaking to. So no assumptions, and also prepare for a lot of perfectly valid questions that might feel very strange to you to have to answer. But those conversations are often the most meaningful ones. Um, Also, I've found networking as well, networking and finding allies, people that do things or understand your mission or do things that are aligned to what you do. That stuff's really helpful and really motivating. And you learn a ton of stuff along the way. So, yeah, just overall, I would just say have a level of open-mindedness and be prepared to explain yourself a lot.
Mhm. It's interesting that point around, people might not understand or might not be where you are yet. I really
Yeah.
love the story that you shared in your pitch video around, well, I loved it and I hated it, but the story around like the first time you saw a person that looked like you on TV. Do you want to share that moment?
Yeah, it's funny. So I look back at it now, it's all quite crazy. But we used to watch Neighbours in our house, and it was always a big topic of conversation that you never saw a black person on Neighbours ever. And then the day that there was one black character, my mom just actually started screaming and sort of pulled me into the front room and sort of demanded I watch this moment. It's funny. It was almost like it's quite funny. You see some of the reactions around. People have seen the Little Mermaid and discovering that Little Mermaid is a little black girl this time. It was a very similar moment a long time ago, which now I think has quite high comedic value because it all feels quite ridiculous.
It feels ridiculous, but it's just crazy to think, right? That those moments are in our lifetime.
100%.
Um, and there's still moments like that in our lifetime, right? There's still things that are going to come that haven't happened before, which
Yeah.
is awesome because what you're doing is hopefully going to help increase those and make them happen sooner.
Yeah, we've
Um,
been talking about this at work as well, because it's 2023 and we've gone through an awards season and people are still talking about first person to do this, first person of color to do this, first Indian song to win. It's kind of crazy. It's that this is just happening now is very, very, very strange to me.
yeah. Hey, anyone who's watching, if you have any questions, do feel free to pop them in. We're about to wrap up, but we want to make sure we answer what you're thinking. So feel free to pop any questions in the comments. Um, and this might be our final question, but how can people support you? What do you need right now?
Similar to what I mentioned before, I mean, pledging is a wonderful thing and a real statement of intent, and that's amazing. But also, just trying to platform, talking about us, sharing any socials that you might have seen, just anything that kind of, if you have any interest whatsoever in representation, equity, diversity, or just want to see more interesting content, it'd be just amazing to share our story in some way. That'd be really cool.
I'm going to pull the question back in that I took out around what is a book that you've read or a TV show that you've seen that's really interesting content recently? What would you
The
recommend?
I've just started a book called Open Water by a writer I think has the best name of any writer I've ever heard. A guy called Caleb Azuma Nelson. Um,
Oh,
Very cool name. Who's a Black British writer. It's a really cool book. I've only just started it, but it's super interesting because it's written in the second person, which is kind of odd. It's made me think that more books should probably be written from that perspective. And then it also contains a lot of creative reference points for stuff that I really love. So I'm really excited to see where this book goes. But so far, so good. And coolest author name ever.
awesome. I like it for two reasons, book recommendation and cool name. Uh, so we might wrap up a little bit early, but what I want to say is thank you for joining me. For
Absolutely.
those
Anytime.
Anytime. For those people that watched or are watching this after the fact, do check out Narrative Muse's campaign. I'll make sure to put the link in the comments and everywhere so you can just go to the PledgeMe page and check it out. There's so much amazing information in the IM around what Narrative Muse are doing, what they've done, where they want to go, what the opportunities are. So definitely highly recommend reading it. It's also possibly one of the most beautiful campaign pages we've ever had. Your team are amazing. Um, they've
Thank
got
you.
a week to go. And so you've got 7 days to get in there and pledge if you'd like to. And if you have any questions for the PledgeMe team or the Narrative Muse team, just jump on the questions section of the campaign page, pop them in there, or send us emails. Contact@pledgeme.co.nz. What's the best email for you, Nigel?
Nigel.Lopez.McBean@narrativemuse.co, or you find me Nigel Lopez-McBean on LinkedIn. Distinctive name, easy to find.
Very easy to find. I love it. So if you like what you see, share this video, share the campaign. Big thanks again, Nigel, for joining us. And thank you to everyone watching.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks so much.
Catch ya.